Hello, students. My name is Professor Yogesh Nagpal, and I'm your faculty for Indian and Global Economic Development, that is International Economics, for third year BCom. So I welcome you to the first lecture for this subject. Um, just to give you a brief, what it is an advancement to your subject, which was taken by you in your first year and second year BCom. Going on to your third year BCom, we are entering into a phase where we are trying to learn what is economic development, what is the context of economic development with like comparing it with the Indian scenario and a global scenario. So we are going to learn a lot of things which are going to talk about Indian economic scenario, Indian economic setup, and we'll compare it with what is available globally, how we look at economics internationally. So very intriguing subject. With it'll have a lot of facts and information. So while writing the answers for this for the questions that you're going to get, you have to include all those facts and figures, whatever is given in this particular subject. So we'll start with the syllabus discussion first. Then we'll talk about chapter first. Under chapter 1, what all different topics we have, we'll cover that up, and then we'll start the subject. This is how the whole flow of today's session will be. Starting with the syllabus, we have the syllabus divided into two terms. The first term includes introduction to the subject. Then in the second chapter, we are discussing about agricultural development in India since independence, industrial development in India since 1991, then infrastructure in India since 1991. You must be observing that in the syllabus itself, uh, uh, quite of a significance is given to the year 1991. Couple of chapters are based on that particular period. So 1991 is an important period which cannot be neglected. In term 2, we talk more specific about topics like human resource development with regards to Indian and global economic. Then how globally economic development is done, what is the role of foreign capital here, foreign trade, what do we mean by balance of payment, the relationship between exports and imports, and finally we end the subject with regional and international economic cooperation. So we talk further into detail about why is it important, what is the structure, objectives, and functions. So we are going to talk about how regional, that is Indian and international economic cooperation happens, how this merger happens, how we are able to link these two topics. So this is the overview of the complete syllabus, the complete book that you have. We are starting with term one. We are starting with the first chapter, that is the introduction to the subject, which is Indian and global economic development. We'll talk about that subject first, that introduction part. Uh, Moving on, what is covered in this particular chapter, we'll see. So you have basic characteristics of the Indian economy and emerging economy. Then we are talking about comparison of Indian economy with developed economies with respect to, we'll be talking very specifically regarding the national income, per capita income, agriculture, industry, and service sector. So this is what is included in your first chapter. So we'll begin with the basic characteristics of the Indian economy and the emerging economy, but we'll go through the introduction of this chapter first. Okay, so now let us understand the subject. Let us understand whether it is Indian or global or international. Ultimately, we are talking about a word which is noted here, that is economic development. So as you all can see, what is economic development? We all must understand that development is moving from point A to point B, and when you see some kind of transformation, when you see some kind of a change, that means we are developing for the betterment, we are developing for some benefit to us. When we say economic development, we look at one word that is given in the first point, that is economic growth. So uh, if any country is able to produce high average rate of economic growth, that means there is an economic development. So what do you mean by this word growth? It is as simple as this, that when you are in your first year BCom, you secured 70% marks. Now when you went into second year BCom, in second year BCom you let us say secured 84%. Okay, so there is an increase of 14%. You can look at 70% in your first year BCom, 84% in your second year BCom. The difference is 84% minus 70%, that is 14%. Now this 14% on 70%, if we have to find a percentage, so you can do a quick calculation if you have a mobile phone with you while you are listening to me. Take 14 divided by 70 multiplied by 100. You will be able to see that there is the answer that you get is 20, that is 20%, which means roughly in your annual performance you have shown a 20% growth in your scores. Now this is what we do. We look at the national income that we have made as a country. At the end of the year, we see it and compare it with the previous year's performance. And if we have grown even a little bit, which means that we have moved from point A to point B. And that's what we are talking about, high average rate of economic growth. So you're looking at some growth, some economic growth, some monetary growth, and that is where economic development comes into picture. So when I say what is economic development, you should be able to say that any increase, any rise in the rate of economic growth can be stated as economic development. But it is not just the monetary growth. We are when you score 84% in your second year BCom and say 70% in your first year BCom, definitely in terms of marks you have done well. So when we look at marks, can we say that you were in a situation to mug the things up better? Can we say that your memory was better? You learned better when the exams were there, exams were nearing, you practiced better. So by just looking at the numbers, we can make a superficial assumption about certain things which may or may not stand true. Similarly, when we look at a country, it is not just the economic numbers or the percentage of growth or the rates that we are talking about. We are also talking about equity and income distribution. So what happened to the rich? What happened to the upper middle class? What kind of an income could middle class earn? And did a few people move out from poverty phase to being closer to a middle class section? Has that changed happened? Has that change happened? So if there is we have earned 100 rupees, has it happened that out of this 100 rupees, 70 rupees is gone to the rich class, 20 is gone to the upper middle class, say 7 or 8 rupees has gone to the middle class, and 2 to 3 rupees is what a poor class has got? So if this has happened, that means the income distribution has been uneven. And this also is an important metric, this also is an important number to make a judgment whether we've had an economic development or not. So if we grow overall as an economy, as a country, yes, that is economic growth. But has there been an equal distribution of the income that has been earned? That also is important question. Have we seen that there has been a fairly distributed regional development? Or see, in our country we have so many states, we have so many top metropolitan cities. Has it happened that maximum of the money has gone to top metro cities like Mumbai, Delhi, um, Kolkata, Bangalore, Chennai, all these top cities? Are they earning the highest amount of money? Or we are seeing tier 2, tier 3 cities also making some money out of it? Has it been fairly distributed in all the regions across the nation? Is each of our regions, we basically have 5 regions in our country. We have the east region, the west region, we have northern region, southern region, and we have the central region of our country. So there are 5 regions. So has this income moved out into regions which are very specific, favoring to specific industries only? Is it that only the western region has made a lot of money, or the northern region has made a lot of money? We have to see that also. If that is fairly distributed, then we can say that there is some economic development happening. Then there is a sectoral balance. Now, what do we mean by sectoral balance? We mean to say that there are different sectors in our country. We have the finance sector, we have the banking sector, we have industrial sector, we have agriculture as a sector, we have primary, secondary, tertiary sector. Is there a proper balance? Has each of the sector made enough money? Has it been distributed in a very systematic and a planned manner? So if that is what has happened, we can say that there is an economic development. So how can we say that you as a student have developed as an all-round personality? By just looking at your mark sheet or the results, can we say that you have done fairly very well? Oh yeah, that can be one dimension of your personality. However, there are other things in your personality, the aspects like, were you involved in any extracurricular activity throughout these 2 years? Were you able to make some presentations in the business world? You are a graduate, commerce graduate. Have you turned out to be to do some kind of an internship for a period of 2 months or 3 months? Did you enter into a world of work? So if you have done multiple things, we can say yes, you have moved from point A to point B, and there we can see a drastic development or transformation. Similarly, you look at a country from that perspective, that when we say economic development, it is not just the numbers that have grown. You also have to see how we have done in other phases of the uh, you know areas. Like we discussed about income distribution, we discussed about regional development, fairly distributed regional development, we discussed about how each sector should be affected equally. That is what economic development. So one of the most challenging problems of the next quarter century is the problem of poor society still driving for development. So if you are able to see some kind of poverty, if you are able to see poor people still available in your society in and around, that means we are still to work on the economic part, economic development part. And the poverty, until the poverty goes away, I think we cannot consider ourselves moving from any point to any point. So if you are able to see a lot of poor people around in any economy, that means there is still a lot of work to be done. In advanced countries, there has been a tendency to take economic development for granted. See, people who are already developed, you ask, okay, now you see, if you give a lecture of say 3 hours, if I make 100 people sit in my lecture in an air conditioned hall, and all these 100 people are from rich class, and the topic that I have called for today, I'm going to talk to these so-called 100 rich people about poverty. How many of these 100 people would be interested to learn about poverty? I don't think so anybody would be also interested. Why would they be interested? Because they are all well to do, they are rich, they come from rich families. Why would they even bother to attend a lecture that is for 3 hours talking about poverty? So, so the basic understanding here is that in advanced countries, the countries which have developed, we call them as first world countries, and they call India and other developing economies as the third world countries. So there is an acronym, if you are aware of it. We call it as BRICS nations. So that stands for BRICS. So B stands for Brazil, R is for Russia, I is for India, C stands for China, S stands for South Africa. So there are five countries who are considered as developing nations, and they call us as third world countries. So these first world countries, like the United States of America, the countries under the European continent, we can see countries like United Kingdom. We know about France and Germany, okay, and Switzerland. These are the major countries in the European side. Then we have Australia, New Zealand. So these are all top countries in the world. They do not consider economic development as a strong subject, as a strong part of any kind of a development, because they see life is so beautiful. So maintaining a steady pace of development became the concern of the rich countries. They were worried, all these rich countries wanted to maintain this, okay, but accelerating the pace of development became a much more pressing problem with the poor countries. So it is a quite a divide. Only rich countries thought and they wanted to talk about how to maintain to how to continue to earn money. It is so simple. How should I continue to earn more money? Whereas the poor countries kept thinking how to come out of poverty. So I hope you all are understanding. Rich were worried and they were taking tensions that how should this money continue to flow, and the poor were worried that how should we come out of poverty. So this is how the whole world is divided. Now even rich countries have realized that their prosperity could not continue if the third world remain undeveloped. Now see, they are talking about the third world. They're talking about countries like India, Russia. Now you look at the whole world. India constitutes almost 23 to 24% of the world market. Now if poor people remain poor, who will purchase their product? Now we poor people are purchasing the Apple iPhones produced by the world's best countries. Right. So the United States of America is number one country in the world, producing Apple iPhones and selling it to India, who is a third world country. So who is going to produce and who is going to purchase? So now the rich countries have started realizing that until and unless the third world countries convert themselves into developed economies, their products are not going to be sold. So slowly and surely they are realizing that we need to bring the living up to a scale where they are able to sell their products, and they are working hard with these countries. They are going to countries like Bangladesh. They have most of the African continent countries have been taken up by number one countries of the world. United States is working profusely in the African continent. Similarly, they are also working in the East Asian, Southeast Asian countries, and in the Indian subcontinent. So, so this is the basic introduction of economic development. We need to understand that uh, not only the numbers but equality in the income distribution, a fair regional distribution and sectoral distribution is important when it comes to economic development. So now we'll talk about Indian economy per se. See, Indian economy is still called as an emerging economy, and there are certain basic features of our economy, and those are listed here. You can see a list of 10 features which describe Indian economy as an emerging economy. Why do we do what we do, and why do we do how do we do? Okay, so there are 10 things that we need to study and see what is our economy about. So they call our economy as a dualist economy is the first point. Then we characterize our economy as a widespread poverty related economy, predominantly ruled by agriculture as a sector, very low levels of per capita income, challenge in controlling population growth, slow but sure improving rate of capital formation. We are able to form some infrastructure for our people. We have certain physical infrastructure development and deficiencies in India. We utilize our resources, human resources, scarcely. We are not able to utilize it fairly. We have a lot of human capital, because if point number 5 is population growth, so what is this whole population sitting and doing in India? Are they not working? So they are willing to work, but we are not able to utilize our human resource. Okay, if whoever is working for us as a human capital, we are not developing any human development index, so our HDIs are very low. We have technology, we have all the facilities, but we are not using it, so the usage of level of technology is low. So you can see, in a nutshell, we have these 10 points that define and describe our economy as an emerging economy. We'll discuss each and every point in detail. We'll understand what is dualistic economy, what do we mean by widespread poverty, what is the predominance of agriculture that I'm talking about, or anything regarding capital formation, infrastructure, utilization of human resources, HDI, and technology. So we'll talk about all of these things in details. We'll start with, what do we mean when I say that it is a dualistic economy? Dualistic economy means we have two ways of looking at things. The first part is an urban based market economy, and the second part is an unorganized traditional economy. So it's very fascinating to know how this works. So you look at anything now, you go and ask to your any of your relatives or friends staying in a village. You ask him, do you get internet? So a friend will say, yes, I do, right? So you sometimes wonder, here sitting in an urban area where I have all the facilities of the world, I get internet, I am able to access it because I stay in an urban area. How my friend who's staying in a village is equally able to get something related to urban area, some internet part. Similarly, if you ask him, are you able to purchase the Lay's chips? He'll say yes, we get Lay's as well, right? So anything that is available here, it is available there also, right? So what are we trying to say is that we have a typical way of doing certain things in the most ultra modern way, that is called as urban based modern market economy. And we also have a parallel system of the most traditional orthodox unaccepted unorganized way also. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Let us look at agriculture sector. So on one hand, some plantations and farms are managed professionally with modern methods of production. Now you'll see wall gardening, you'll see green revolution, you'll see fruits, vegetables, flowers being grown in a shut premise. So I mean, there are terraces where you can have your own plantations in a very modern, systematic, planned manner. You will see the highest usage of technology to grow plants. You will see highest use of technology for growing precious flowers, unavailable flowers, and we produce those flowers, we grow those flowers and vegetables and fruits, exotic flowers, and we sell them, send them abroad. Now this is one side of our agricultural sector which is so modern, well organized, systematized. And on the other side you will see an unorganized system where our farmers are struggling to get water for their farming. They are struggling to sell their crop into the market. They are facing huge losses. They are giving away their lives just because it is an unorganized traditional way of doing things. So we are a dualistic economy. We are parallelly doing two things, one in a smart way, modern way, and the other in a very traditional and old method. Okay, and they both coexist, right? This is about agriculture sector. Look at industrial sector. Now, along with modern industries, there exists a number of cottage and village industries. So you'll get some papads and pickles also. They are also being produced in industries, but these are very small cottage, unorganized, with a lot of manual effort, nothing automatic, and they are produced and they are available in the market. Plus, you'll also see the same pickle coming through a huge factory of say Kisan or say Praveen. These are huge factories with modern equipments, but they still are able to give the market. So the shelf is filled with both the products. One is of an industrial, modern, ultra modern technology, and the other is of a handmade, manual operational activity that is available. So look at a transport sector. You want to transport goods, you can do it through planes, trains, buses, cars. But you will also see that the goods are transported through bullock carts, wheelbarrows. You will see animals on the road. You will see donkeys, buffaloes, horses, camels, elephants also transporting. So if I have to really explain it to someone that what kind of an economy is India, I'll have to tell. See, we have both the kinds of transports. How do you want to send your goods to you? When you go to a place like Lucknow, as soon as you get down on the railway station, you'll see there are two words that people call out to. One is they say auto. They call out auto so that you can travel, and they also call out rickshaw. Now these are two separate objects there. Auto is a separate object, and a rickshaw is a separate object. Now what is auto? Auto is our auto that you get, the automatic vehicle, and rickshaw is a man driven cart, that is a rickshaw, right? So both coexist. Why would a man drag human beings with his physical effort, where the cart that he's purchased is of the same value of the auto rickshaw that is available? So you look how both the things coexist, how it is a dualistic economy. When you look at financial sector, you will see a lot of local zamindars, local money lenders, they are also giving away loans, and they are taking your jewelry for mortgage. And you'll see in the same market, you'll also see banks, modern banks, where you go fill the application forms, and you give your give the name of a guarantor, you give some collaterals to get some kind of a loan. So look at how each sector is working in dual manner. So that is why we call India as a dualistic economy. Now, the second point which I would like to share is widespread poverty. Now, there's nothing new when I talk about poverty. We all know, we have so many movies made on this poverty, but we must know what we are talking about, how it is divided into one, two, three types of poverties. What exactly are we saying when we say poverty? So there is one poverty that is very specific to the money that we earn or not earn. So if you earn money, if you earn less, based on your needs, you are still poor. If you don't earn, there's no money, you are still poor. But we are calling you poor because of money. Okay, so when we call you, you are poor because of money. That is income poverty. See, income poverty is a stumbling block for any emerging economy. So if poverty is there, the economy will not grow. What is poverty? It's a pronounced deprivation in well-being. So you're trying to be well, you're trying to feel good. In your process of being well, you are deprived of something. You're not going to get something. So that is a stumbling block. So if you remove that stumbling block, you automatically emerge, and you automatically develop as an economy. So what is poverty? Is a multi-dimensional deprivation which severely restricts the capabilities that a person has to lead the kind of life he or she values. Now, if you value to live on a king size bed, and you're not getting that bed, you're poor, right? It's so simple. So if you value that you need a touch screen smartphone with say quad camera and what all features, and which costs say around 40,000, if you don't get it, the thing that you value, you're poor. Now, interestingly, I'll just tell you, this definition has been given by Indian Nobel laureate Dr. Amrita Sen. He is also a very senior economist. He's given this definition. It's a multi-dimensional deprivation which restricts, which stops the capabilities of a person that he has to lead the kind of life that he values. So what do poor people want? They want a simple kacha house with a normal twin bed to live, a cupboard, and what basic amenities they require. If they don't get it, that's why they are termed as poor. And they want food. See, roti, kapda, makan, mobile. Food, clothing, shelter, mobile. These four things are required to live now. And of course, education. Well, education is provided by government free of cost at most of the locations. Even English medium education is free nowadays, so it doesn't cost much. So fine, education is one of the basic needs. If you get your basic needs and you are satisfied with it, that means you are not poor. So as I said, one of the major poverty points is income poverty. How to define that? There is something called as poverty line. Now, poverty line is what? Is a minimum level of consumption expenditure. Now, let us understand this word, consumption. Consumption means something that you consume. Something that you consume, and the money that you are spending to consume. If you are spending 1000 rupees a month, so your consumption expenditure is 1000 rupees. So, what is the minimum level of consumption expenditure? If your minimum level of consumption expenditure is below the standard cutoff point, that means you are below poverty line. Now, Indian poverty is predominantly in the rural areas, because villagers, in village, what happens, minimum level of consumption expenditure is also not available with people, and that's why they are poor. More than 75% of the Indian poor live in rural areas. This is a very old report, almost 20 years back. World Bank had said 35% Indians lived below international poverty line. So there's an international poverty line separately given. In 11-12, the incidence of poverty declined to 21.9% in India. So we are still moving in better position. We are from point A to point B, that is moving from 35% to now 22%. And the number of rural poor declined significantly. So we are seeing that also the poor people who are living in the villages has declined drastically, right? So So this is what is income poverty, where you are below poverty line, when you are not getting the money. That's where we call ourselves as below poverty line. Now, with this, I'll end today's lecture, students. I'll just give you a quick recap of what we have discussed so far. We discussed the name of the subject, that is Indian and Global Economic Development. That's a third year BCom subject. We discussed the syllabus. These are the chapters that we are going to do. Then we discussed the first chapter, Introduction. We are going to talk about Indian economy as an emerging economy. We will also compare it with the world economies with respect to national income, per capita income, agriculture, industry, and service sector. We discussed what do we mean by economic development and how it is related, and how other countries think about us, how we should think about ourselves, and how what is the meaning of first world and third world countries. Then we spoke about 10 characteristics of Indian economy as an emerging economy, and we spoke about 2 points as of now: a dualistic economy and widespread poverty. So I told you what is the difference, how two different ways of living we have identified in India. Then we just started discussing about income poverty. There's still three topics left, that is health and education, vulnerability, and voicelessness and powerlessness. So we'll discuss about it in the next session. Um, just gear up to study this. Before going to the second session, you need to go through this first session so that you have a proper understanding of what I'm talking about. Thank you so much for paying attention. See you.